Training camp has arrived. It is July 25th, 2022. The Chicago Bears will report on Tuesday as a full team to Halas Hall in Lake Forest for the first season of the Ryan Poles, Matt Eberflus regime. That's Dionne Miller. I'm Dan Wiederer. We are back here to start another season, Dionne. Here we go. How excited are you?
First of all, it's so nice to see you. It has been too long. We took a nice long summer break.
Yep.
We are back. I know it's July and it's hot outside. I'm wearing a sweatshirt. Maybe I'm trying to channel my fall vibes.
You're channeling your Vic Fangio vibe. No matter how hot it is, wear a sweatshirt.
You're there. Yes. See, now it all makes sense. Yes. I am channeling my Vic Fangio vibe. I'm excited. I always am when training camp starts. It might fade by Thursday, but right now I'm very enthusiastic and excited to talk Bears. I love the rhythm of starting training camp. I love getting in that rhythm of covering the team again on a regular basis and hopefully getting to know some of these guys that I still have to look up on the roster every single time I see them, and getting to know a little bit more about who Poles is, who Eberflus is, the kind of team that they're trying to build. I know the last time we heard from Matt Eberflus, he was saying the most comfortable aspect of the team he feels right now is with the culture, which I feel like we've heard that before.
Yes,
but I want to see if that really has laid some sort of a honest and strong foundation for them starting training camp.
Well, first of all, you make a good point about sort of the rhythm of training camp. And it's also this like flood of initial excitement on report day and the first practice and then the first padded practice. And then there's this stretch of grind where it is just summer practices and you're grinding and you're grinding. And then you kind of lead up to that first preseason game and you get to see the guys on the field, even if it's just for a series or two here or there. And you say, okay, football is just around the corner. The Bears obviously will have 3 preseason games again this year, and they've got a lot of work to do between now and week 1 to even become competitive again, right? And I think we've been very honest with this audience since the regime change about how steep this climb is going to be for Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus. And now their union together, Dionne, I think really takes on just such a greater meaning to setting a direction for this ball club. You had a lot of chair rearranging and everything else going on from January through July. And now here we are trying to lead up to a season. And these two men together and individually have to do their part to get this thing pointed in the right direction. So the first question I have for you is just sort of with Matt Eberflus, right? Over these next 6 weeks, what does he need to do and what does he need to accomplish inside those walls in Lake Forest to give you a feeling that, okay, even though this is setting up to be a very long season with a losing record, this guy has the steering wheel, he's got control, and he knows where he wants to go with it?
I think the things he does need to be very decisive and intentional. And I think that's the kind of guy that he is. But I don't want to see any hesitation in him. I want to see that when he has control of the room and he has that voice in the room where everybody's paying attention, I want to see that he's making decisive moves and he's guiding them in a unified direction. And I want to see that happen pretty quickly. And I do feel like because he's new and because there are so many new faces in the locker room, he has the opportunity to establish that and kind of build on what they did in the offseason that he felt very good about. Now, none of that has anything to do with the product on the field, but I think that truly is the starting point because he is the head coach. He has said he has practiced 30 years for this, right? He has been around this game for so long, waiting for this moment. And he's put guys in place around him that he trusts to guide those units. So it's on him to unify everything and be that strong leader that he was hired to be. I think we need to see that right out of the gate.
Here's my 3-box checklist for the next 6 weeks for Matt Eberflus in phase 1, really, of starting the 2022 season. You need to set a tone. You need to establish standards, and you need to raise the bar. I mean, how often have you and I sat in these windows and talked about raising the bar at Halas Hall? And Matt Eberflus seems to want to do that, right? He talked all through the offseason about establishing the mechanisms for how a team practices, for how they meet, for being on time, for doing these things. Well, now you have to make sure that you put that bar up and you keep it there, right? It can't lower one day. It can't lower 2 rungs the next day. It has to be a bar that everyone has to clear on a daily basis to set that tone that we talked about. I think if Matt accomplished anything during the OTA minicamp portion of things, it was allowing his players to hear his voice, tell them what he wants out of them. Now it's up to them to respond, right? And to figure out whether they are all in with his philosophy and his vision, and how do you make that connect during a period that's going to be super busy. Listen, he told them, listen, bring your track shoes, which was his sort of roundabout way of saying, we're going to be practicing at a tempo and a speed and with expectations that are very demanding. So you better be ready for that when you come. Now, for me, the flip side of this is you better be able to strike a balance as a head coach to know, as a first-time head coach in this role, when you need to pull back. You need to be able to read body language. You need to be able to read eyes. You need to be able to read emotional fatigue and understand that at certain points of camp, you got to hit the brake a little bit and let guys catch their breath so you don't lose them with all the intensity throughout.
Well, yeah, I totally agree with you on that. I mean, for crying out loud, Dan, they got a day off because they were practicing too hard. So I want to know that he is reading the room and connecting with them in a way that builds trust right away. I feel like that's where Mark Trestman swung and missed, right? Like he was trying so hard to unify everybody. It was almost too hard and disingenuous, and they didn't buy in the same way. I hope that the way that Eberflus comes in, he's able to do that. I'm also interested in how they will address the fact that 3 of these new players have been arrested since in the offseason, and how that reflects on the locker room and the kind of guys they're bringing in and their response to that. I'm interested to see, because I think that will be a window into who Eberflus is, but namely who Ryan Poles is and how he's going to operate this entire organization.
It's a question that Ryan Poles has to answer on Tuesday. Remember, these 2 men are going to sit up at a dais inside that press room at Halas Hall. They're going to talk about setting a foundation for moving forward with this team. Well, you have to be able to address these things that you said about setting culture and bringing in team first, driven, grinding guys that understand the big picture of this. And when you have 3 guys, including Byron Pringle, Matt Adams, and David Moore, get arrested in I think it was an 11-week span, you have to answer for that. And you have to answer for that not only in front of the media and for your fans, but to your team, to let people know this is not okay, right? And no matter how important you are to the team or what your contract looks like, there's a certain way things are done, and that includes off-the-field behavior, right? Yeah. I think we're going to learn a lot about Ryan Poles in the next 6 months, because I think I had a chance to do a pretty deep dive profile on him for the start of camp here, and just getting to know a little bit more about his track here to Chicago, and the idea that everyone remembers the last 7 years of the Chiefs, right? And 7 consecutive playoff appearances and a Super Bowl win and a Super Bowl loss, and all the things that come with that. Ryan Poles will tell you, my first 4 years, we finished in last place 3 times, and we're 23 and 41, and overall, and it's not an easy road to get from there to here. But he has watched it be done, right? And he was promoted multiple times under 3 different general managers, from Scott Pioli to John Dorsey to Brett Veach. And Ryan Poles believes that experience and that breadth of experience of both being on the bottom and being on top gives him an understanding of what the vision needs to look like. We look at the roster currently, as do most people across the league, and they say, boy, this is a bottom 6 roster in the NFL, right? You've come on this very show and said 4 wins, right? And so there's an understanding that there are going to be severe bumps in the road in the early stages. But if you take the long view and you have this big picture view of how you need to construct a roster, how you need to build through the draft, how you need to sort of assemble free agency capital and draft capital and do all these things, Ryan Poles is going to have to do a lot in year 1 to get that message of patience across to not only the fan base, not only the media, but the people inside the building, to realize, okay, there is a longer view here. And as hard as that is to retain during an NFL season when every game takes on utmost importance, you have to have that feel as a general manager. And he's called it self-awareness of the roster, right? And understanding what's here, what's not here, and how you go about filling in all those holes.
He has kept true to his word. He has no emotional attachment to anybody on that list, and he is making moves that he believes will set up his team. But power rankings have come out, and for the next 3 years, and the Bears are projected 30th in the league. That's where they're at, and that's the perception from the outside. This is a roster that's still a who's who and where did they come from kind of team, and there's just a lot of question marks around that. But I want to see that Poles is transparent with us, maybe talks to the media a little bit more. I know that was asked of him this week, if he would be the kind of GM who would come out and talk to the media and be aware that the fans want to hear from him in the midst of whatever this season looks like, and that hopefully we'll hear his voice a little bit more, because he's going to have to take ownership for what happens on the field.
Well, you have greater experience than I do at covering these other teams in the Chicago market, whether it be, Theo and Jed with the Cubs or Rick Hahn with the White Sox, and dealing with the Bulls and those things, and seeing the different ways the different general managers approach the back and forth and the messaging, right? The messaging isn't just for media people to have stories. It's to be able to communicate to your fans what your vision is and what your philosophies are and why move X was made and move Y wasn't and all these different things. And so that's going to be a dance that Ryan Poles is going to have to learn to dance a little bit. And it's going to be interesting to see how he handles it. We all know what Ryan Pace's track record was in terms of receding to the background and the infamous picture of him peeking out from behind the door because he didn't want to be on center stage once the season began. And it hurt Ryan, I think, overall in the public perception of who he was and what he was trying to get done. And you would hope someone inside Halas Hall communicates that and says, look, there's a different way to do this. Do what's comfortable for you, but also understand what this is and what this microphone and this megaphone that you have are and what they can do to help establish, right, the philosophies and vision of our organization and where we're trying to go. Because, by the way, for 30 plus years, we haven't been able to go anywhere meaningful on a regular basis whatsoever.
Right. And here's what I've noticed with other GMs in town. Obviously, they have much longer schedules and many more games. But I do feel like every couple of homestands, we hear from Jed Hoyer or we hear from Rick Hahn. I know that in the past, we heard from Gar Forman and John Paxson more with the Bulls. We're still getting to know AK, but I do feel like he's around a little bit more. Same with the Blackhawks. We're still getting to know Kyle Davidson, but there are ways to do it where you're communicating with the fan base, with the media, and keeping your voice out there and taking ownership of what the product looks like. There are ways to do that are different than what Ryan Pace did. And I think it is going to be helpful for Ryan Poles to do that, not just about endearing yourself to a fan base that is so hungry, but to also have them hear how dedicated he is to winning, right? To win at all costs, to make sure he's setting the team up for that kind of success beyond just a minute or two, like to really put the franchise headed in the right direction. And I think the more he talks through that is going to be super valuable, especially if they are only winning 4, 5, or 6 games.
One of the biggest questions I had throughout this offseason was why at age 36, with his first big swing at hiring a coach, that Ryan Poles opt for 51-year-old Matt Eberflus, who's a defensive-minded coach brought in to oversee the development of a young quarterback, a guy who in his coordinator roles only had modest success. It wasn't like Matt Eberflus was lighting the league on fire and everyone said that's the next can't-miss coach. And Ryan Poles has talked very clearly about sharing a vision with Matt in terms of the way championship teams need to be built, the standards that need to be set. He's talked about Matt's emotional intelligence, his ability to be demanding but caring. And I think that's the balance we talked about earlier about making sure that your subordinates, your troops, your players understand exactly what you want out of them in a way that is firm and unbendable, but also treats them as human beings and gives them a respect. And so there's a belief in Ryan Poles that Matt Eberflus has that leadership quality. Now, listen, you and I both know that the drafting of Mitch Trubisky was always going to be compared against Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. Fail for the Bears. In the same regard, we're going to have to constantly compare Matt Eberflus to the other head coaches that were available in this cycle for the Bears to take. And when Ryan Poles hires a guy basically 24 hours after he himself got the job and does so with a when you know conviction, you say, well, Ryan Pace told us he knew about Mitch Trubisky and it didn't work out. So Brian Dable, right? Byron Leftwich, Nathaniel Hackett, Kevin O'Connell, all these other guys that were up for jobs around the league, you're going to have to keep a peripheral lens on those guys to see whether Ryan Poles' instincts were correct, right? And they were on point. And it's going to be very interesting to see how the relationship and the marriage with Matt Eberflus kind of just evolves and develops, because it's so important to setting the tone. And by the way, setting a stage for Justin Fields, as we mentioned, to be the guy that hopefully is the catalyst to taking you where you want to go.
Firm but caring. Please reflect Rod Marinelli. Like, that's the first thing I thought of. And I know that the influence that Rod has had on Eberflus, and I don't think that would be a bad thing for this group to have that kind of leadership that is firm but caring, and then allowing Justin and Luke Getsy to kind of run their own show the way that it appears that they're going to, the way that we've heard is wonderful things about how quickly they've bonded and how Luke is so ready to run this offense, and Justin's going to be put in a position to succeed. Okay, then let's see that. And let's see Eberflus kind of I don't want him to be totally separated from it the way Nagy was from the defense. I don't think that's necessary. I think he needs to be involved in that in his own way. But it's so important that Justin take that next step and that we see him taking that next step, regardless of the record. I think that's where we need to see kind of that firmness and that conviction of like, this is the direction we're going and you guys will be able to see it and we'll see the offense improve. I mean, Dan, they scored 28 points in victory one time last year,
right.
28 plus in victory one time. That's not big boy football.
We've sat through 3+ years of offensive ineptitude that's been really difficult to watch, and Chicago doesn't really know what it looks like to be a successful offensive organization. Ryan Poles does, right? He's been in Kansas City for a long time, and he watched this explosion of an offense take root. And that, I think, is another experience that is very important to point out, because Ryan was a key cog in the talent evaluation machine in 2017 when the Chiefs went and surprised everyone by trading up and taking Patrick Mahomes. And one of the things that he told me in the spring was that there was a sense within their building at a point in the pre-draft process where it was, what can Patrick do? Let's stop looking at the things he can't do. Let's stop looking at the interceptions that everyone's fixated on, some of the silly decisions, and say, what does this guy do at a high level? And they would put on film and they would say, all right, let's eliminate all the easy throws, the quick throws, the short throws. Let's look at everything 15 to 20 yards down the field. And then they had these, what Ryan called holy crap moments, where it was like, holy cow, this is intoxicating to watch this guy throw with this accuracy, with this big play mentality. We can work with this. We can pair him with Andy Reid and allow him to bring out his best. And one of the things he said about Andy's development of Patrick was that Andy had a way of demanding that everything be done a certain way and really being firm about that when Patrick was in his early stages, but also then knowing the days and the months and the weeks when he had to love Patrick up a little bit and boost his confidence and get him going. We've seen the results. The guy's won an MVP award. He's won a Super Bowl. He's on a fast track to the Hall of Fame. And so you would hope, you're not comparing Patrick Mahomes to Justin Fields, but you would hope that some of the notes that Ryan Poles scribbled down in whatever binders and notebooks he had in Kansas City are on the front of his desk at Halas Hall to be able to help Matt Eberflus and Luke Getsy and Andrew Janocko bring Justin along at a very, very important stage of his development.
And the last time that we talked to Justin, he was very open about, I'm so glad the season isn't starting now. We're not ready. I want to see that he comes into camp ready, like really recognizing the fact that we're 10, 11 days from their first preseason game, that there is a place to take a step. And I've done it. I put in the work off the field and now I'm ready to show you on the field. I hope we see that early in training camp. Yeah.
And listen, so Tuesday, we're going to get into that room at Halas Hall, and we're going to have Matt and Ryan sit up there at that dais, and then we'll have a flood of players come throughout the day, and it'll be our arrival. It'll be our arrival into the 2022 season, and you know that it's a classroom out there, right? If you're paying attention every day, you're learning something new about this team, about the direction they're headed, about the key pieces in it. And I think, to your point, with so many new faces, not just on the roster, but coaching staff, front office, support staff, you look around when you go out there and you're like, am I in the right place? Because I don't recognize anyone out here, right? I mean, it's crazy on certain days. And so this next 6-week period will be our kind of orientation and acclimation to what the 2022 Bears are going to look like, and hopefully what the 2023 and 2024 Bears hope to look like. And so it's going to be really fascinating to kind of to be in the environment again, right? And to be able to read those signs.
I might wear a name tag. Would that be weird?
No, I think you.
Hi, my name is Dionne.
Yeah, as long as you continue to wear the hooded sweatshirts when it's 95 degrees out, put on some sunscreen and a hooded sweatshirt, and just do the Vic thing.
I told you, I'm channeling fall vibes. It's here, football vibes.
I love it. I never rush fall. Summer is the best, and I'm not going to rush it now. But you can do so, and I'll meet up with you sometime in late October when I feel ready to embrace fall.
Sounds like a plan, Dan.
We'll see you then.